Hello everybody, welcome back. Jiu-Jitsu 2000 here today. I'm back with an interesting video for you. Today I want to talk about the Pathfinder Phase 1 system. I want to talk about block number 9. We are on module 3, and what I want to talk today with you about is resources. And more specifically, I want to talk about the creation of an infusion, and then I'm going to talk about decoctions. So looking at my journal here, again we're on phase 1 block 9 module 3. We're going to talk about an infusion. An infusion is the process of extracting chemical compounds or flavors from plant material by allowing the material to steep over time. This is generally 1 part dry to like 1 cup of water, and when I say 1 part, I'm generally talking about between a teaspoon and a tablespoon of dried leaf material. If you're going to be using fresh leaf material or fresh pine needles, if you will, 3 to 4 teaspoons or 3 to 4 tablespoons of fresh to 1 cup of water. So softer plants and things like needles and leaves are good candidates for making infusions. Infusions are a good natural way of getting resources back into your body if you're in an event where you're suffering from dehydration, or should I say lack of nutrients. If you're not finding food to eat, you can at least get some vitamins and things like that from these infusions. Now the way I like to do them, I call them bush teas. That's just a generic term that I use. But generally what I'll do is I'll take like pine needles, for example, and I'll take the long pine needles and I'll cut them with scissors or my knife, and I'll cut them down into little sections, ½ inch, something like that. Nothing too crazy. But I get a good handful. I don't measure anything. When I have a good handful of pine needles that are cut up, I take a pot of boiling water, generally a cup or 2 of water. It's boiling, okay? So as I'm putting these things in the pot, I'm taking the pot off the fire. Once I take the pot off the fire, I'll put a lid over it, and that's what we call steeping. That's where you let it sit for at least 5 minutes, and the heat from the water will extract certain things from those needles. Okay, after I let it sit for a few minutes, then I'll come back and I'll pour that mixture through a bandana or through a paper towel or something like that to keep the material out of my cup, and then what's left in my cup I will drink like a tea. So that's an infusion. Now the second one I want to talk about is what they refer to as a decoction. The method of extraction is by boiling dissolved chemicals from herbal plant material. So first you would mesh the material, then you would boil it. This is good for stems, barks, nuts, roots, rhizomes, which is a mass of roots for the lack of a better description. And so this is how you would make decoctions. Now again, the big difference between a decoction and an infusion is an infusion you only steep the material, you remove it from the heat. On a decoction, you keep it on the heat, keep it on the boil, and it's a little hotter. Infusions are good for using softer plant materials such as leaves, pine needles, things like that, flowers, and decoctions are for harder materials such as stems, barks, roots, nuts, rhizomes, which for the lack of a better description is a series of roots or a mass of roots. Now the next one that I want to talk about, it's not really a requirement on this course, but I wanted to bring it up briefly. It's what they call a tincture. A tincture is an alcoholic extract of plant or animal material. So instead of using the water to extract those things from the plant material, we're going to use alcohol to do that. The extract should have an ethanol of between 25 and 60%. A tincture is a solution that has alcohol as its solvent. Solvent meaning, again, the material that we're heating the stuff up in. Herbs are put in a jar and you add 80 proof vodka and let it stand for 2 to 3 weeks, shaking that jar occasionally. 1 part herbs to 2 to 10 parts alcohol. However, 1 part herb to 5 parts alcohol is the standard for a tincture. Now, if you want to talk about infusions, decoctions, and tinctures, for the lack of a better way of explaining it, from my understanding, an infusion would be like a light duty type treatment. A decoction would be like a medium duty type treatment, and a tincture is a heavy duty type treatment. That's just my opinion on my understanding of them. Now I want to take and I want to show you very quickly how I like to make some of my bush tea. This is a classic example of an infusion. Now you can get a lot of vitamin A and a lot of vitamin C. Behind me you can see there's this pine tree. This is a short needled pine. It's not a long needle, it's a short needle. So I can still use this to get nutrients from this tree. Back at camp I already have a fire going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife here very carefully, and I'm going to take a few small pieces of this material. Let's do maybe 1 or 2 more. 3. You know what? Let's do 1 more. I think that right there, folks, should be plenty for this tea. I have my small nesting cup, and I'm just going to pour these babies out. Set my nesting cup right there, because what I want to do, whoops, sorry about that, is I want to cut these boughs down into small pieces, just little guys like this, nothing crazy. The reason I'm doing this is because it makes it easier to open up the material to extract the things out of it that I want for my tea. So I'm just cutting them up just like this. And then what I'll do is I'll take and all of this pine needle that I'm cutting, and I'll put them all in this little nesting cup, because that's what's going to go inside of my tea. So I'm just filling it up just like this. I'm going to get a little more. So I'm just going like this. Nothing too crazy, folks. Try not to get too much of the woody part. Okay. Take that woody part out there. A little more. Another technique that you could use if you want to is you could rip the pine needles off like this. If you want to rip them off of the woody part, you can do that as well. Take your knife and cut these babies down. We're almost there. Make sure you don't cut your fingers. Again, the purpose of cutting all this up is to allow the essential oils and stuff that we want in our tea to flow out. So there we go. So we have something that looks about like that. Nothing too crazy. Here's my water bottle. Here's some water. And here's my deal to get the water bottle out of the fire. I'm going to go ahead and pour this water in here. Just like that. And I'm going to put my bail, if you will, on there so I can get it out of the fire. I'm just going to set it right there and let the water boil. Nothing too crazy. I also have my bandana available and my needles. We have a good rolling boil. Now it's time to remove our water from the fire. Set that baby right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour my pine needles in this pot here. Pour them all in there. From here, see if that'll balance here. See if this is hot or not. Okay, let me use my stick here. Remove this bail, and I'm going to put my nesting cup right on the top here. Just like this, and we'll let that steep for 5 minutes. Let's take a look and see what we have here. This is all still pretty hot. Set that nesting cup there. Let's use this as a pot support. Take this stick and just kind of mix it around a little bit. And one thing I like to do is, if you have any honey available, honey is a great natural sweetener. Between a teaspoon and a tablespoon is about what I like to use. This gives it a nice sweet taste, makes it where it's not so bitter. And I'm just going to stir that in a little more. We'll let it steep just a little more. So I'm just going to pour the tea into this jug here. It's still a little bit warm to the touch, but it's not bad. So I'm just going to make a little divot down in there and start pouring the tea. Again, the purpose of the bandana is to filter out the leafy material, whether it's leaves or needles or whatever it is that we've used. Just mixing it. It's full of nutrients. If you got honey, it makes it taste really good. I can smell it, and it smells really good. Smells like Christmas. If your flow rate gets slow like this, I'll show you a little trick how we can deal with that here in a second. We'll just basically come up like this, switch to a new spot, put a new divot, and let's go pouring again. See how the flow increased? And what's left inside of here is the plant matter, the pine needles. And that's all the infusion right there. Now I can take a little water and I can clean out my stainless steel cup. But that is what we have left. That is my infusion. Now I'm going to put the lid on and I'm going to let this cool. Once it gets cool, we're going to drink it. So now I want to talk about, besides the obvious meat that you get from animals, I want to talk about some of the potential resources that you can secure from these animals. Now I'm referring back to my logbook here. You can use the antlers. You can take the antlers and you can take the point of the antlers. You can use it for flint knapping. You can use antlers to make buttons. You can do a lot of things with the antlers. You can sell the rack at a trade. You get a value out of those nice racks. Fur of the animal, you can do a lot of things with the fur. You can make blankets. You can make you can tan the hide, and again, you can use it as a trade item or sell it. You can make shelter out of it. You can make blankets. You can make clothing. You can do a lot of things with the fur. The brains of the animal can be used to help tan the fur. You could also use it to take that and put on traps as a bait to catch other animals. The teeth and the bones, and when I'm talking about teeth, I'm talking about like tusks or something like that off of an elephant or a big old woolly mammoth. No, but seriously, the bones, you can use the bones as tools. You can use, like, one prime example that you could use, like for the vertebrae bone, is for a bearing block on a bow drill fire. That works pretty good. The claws and things like that of the animal you can use for jewelry and trade. The sinew or tendons can be used as cordage. Now the sinew is generally found up in the spinal area of an animal, but you can make natural cordage. Now of course you can use the meat for consumption. You could also use the meat for bait, for traps, for fishing, all kinds of things. The animal fat, you can render it down and produce tallow. Tallow, you can do a lot of things. You can make candles, you can make soaps, you can use it as bait, you can use it for putting on the wood implements of your wooden things like your axe, and it'll keep the wood moist. You could put it on leather to keep it pliable. Tallow is a very, very abundant resource. You could use it as, like I mentioned earlier, as a candle or a lamp. There's a lot of things. The organs of the animal, you can eat them, some of the organs, and some of the other organs that you don't want to eat, you can use as bait for trapping. The urine sacs or the bladder, you can take some of that scent and you can make like a scent trail where you could attract game. You could also use the bladder as a water pouch to carry water if you had to. The tail, not really anything that I can think of on the tail. The skull, you could use the skull for trade. You can use it for to sell, you know, like a European type mount where they have like this bleach white skull, very pretty looking. Tusks of the animal, like for example elephants and stuff like that, those are a big trade or selling item. I think that's some of the ideas though that you can use about animals other than the obvious meat. Well, here's my bush tea. Let's give it a taste. That is excellent. I can taste the pine, I can taste the honey. In fact, I'm going to shake this, mix it a little more. Man, that is good stuff. We got what, 12 ounces there? 10 and a half, 11? Man, that's good. So this is an infusion. Excellent, excellent. Sometimes it takes a minute to get that taste, you know, to figure out that taste. And it's difficult at first. But the way it makes you feel after you drink this, you feel amazing. Nature provides, folks. This stuff is still warm, but it's really good. That is tasty. You should try it. It's really good. So not only do you get hydrated, but you get some nature's natural nutrients, some herbal nutrients. This again, folks, is an infusion. This is what I like to refer to as bush tea. It's excellent. The honey helps a lot, because I think without the honey you wouldn't have that sweetness to it. So I'd highly recommend carrying some honey with you when you go out in the woods. That would be my 11th C. A container of honey. So then, now that I brought that up, I got to talk about some of the redundancies and some of the uses that I could use honey for. I could use it for glue. I could use it to attract bees that I could catch and use as bait. I could use it to sweeten things, all kinds of things. I could actually put honey on a cut in lieu of sap. That was excellent. That was really good. I want some more. So folks, I want to say thank you for joining me today on Block 9. We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about plants and animals. We talked about wild edibles. We talked about wild medicinals. We talked about animal signs. We talked about tracking a little bit. We talked about resources. We talked about infusions, decoctions. Excuse me. And we talked about different uses that we can get out of animals other than just the meat. So again, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you coming along with me on this journey. Please feel free to leave comments down below, like this video, share this video, and if you like the content that you see on my channel, please subscribe. And we'll see you next time. We'll be talking about Block 10. We will be signaling for help. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, Block 10 is the only block in this Phase 1 training that only has 2 modules. There's not a 3rd module for Block 10. So stay with me. Hope you enjoy it. Peace.